Welcome to Straight Talk on Project Management, an unscripted and unedited video series with Stoneseed's David Cotgreave. Get in touch with David and find out more about Stoneseed at stoneseed.co.uk. Episode 4. It's all about the future and future trends in IT project management. What do you think the next big thing in project management is going to be, the next big trend?
I think it's interesting when you talk about trends, and whether that be trends around ways of doing things and different methodologies, tool sets, life cycles, or whether that's kind of trends in how project management is going to be applied in terms of subject matter. And I've been reading a book recently, and I'm going to make sure that I get the gentleman's name right. Harvard Business Review PM Handbook, and Antonio Nito Rodriguez, who's authored that, talks about something called the project canvas. And he talks about purpose and sponsorship and stakeholders and deliverables and plans, etc., everything that will go into a project cookpot, I suppose. And he argues that it's the same for every project. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about agile, or you're talking about waterfall, or you're talking about Kanban. It doesn't matter what the actual mechanism of delivery and governance is. It's all the same. The way you structure that and the way you choose to deliver is what's different. And I was thinking back when I was thinking about what we might be talking about today, and I went back to a piece of work I was doing probably 15-20 years ago. I was helping an organisation to establish what their core operational processes needed to be. And I thought, how are we going to do this? And I remembered the Rudyard Kipling 6 Honest Serving Men poem, or at least the starting of it anyway, and the what, why, when, the how, where and who. And I thought, actually, that's the way we should do it, because that gives us all the signposts that we need. And I still subscribe to that today. And I think that we get tied up in the latest, greatest, fanciest way of doing it, and and things get misrepresented, and the old we're not doing waterfall, we're going to do agile because agile means that we don't need to write anything down as much. Well, no, that's not true, is it? Actually, what it means is that we're not going to start at step 1 and go to step 100 and not take stock as we go through, and we're going to remove or at least reduce as many of the barriers as we can that perhaps are put in our way by documenting things that perhaps we don't need to. But you still need to document stuff. You still need to know what the plan is. You still need to do the planning, perhaps more importantly. And that sort of what, why, when, how, where and who is probably as good a checklist and tool set for not just a project manager, but for anybody really who's trying to get to a particular endpoint and set of outputs. So you'll hear about hybrid, you'll hear about and that, again, that's nothing new in terms of blending of approaches and tool sets, and whether you can do that at scale, safe agile and Scrum as part of that, and large scale and disciplined agile, and and traditional waterfall and Prince and Kanban, and all those kinds of things. And there'll always be something new that comes along. But going back to this project canvas concept, I think there's a lot of value in that, and I think that's what people do logically. And I've always maintained that if you get a group of relatively sensible, whatever that means, but people in a room, and you say to them, right, we want you to work out how to do X, and it doesn't matter what X is, but let's just say it's like, let's use a housing analogy because it's always quite straightforward for the purpose of these. So we want you to build a house. Then I always maintain that group of people would sit down and say, right, okay, so what are we trying to achieve? What does it look like? Is it 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, 1 bedroom? Is it a flat, an apartment? What is it? And then they're going to say, okay, and how do we go about delivering that? So where do we need to start? well, we need to draw something, or we need to get at least something down that represents what we're going to try and produce, because otherwise, how do we know that we've got there if we don't know what we're trying to produce as the end result? And then when they've done that, they're going to say, okay, so how do we get to that point? And right, well, we need to put it in the ground probably, so we need to do some foundations, and on we go and on we go and on we go. I think it's very rare for somebody who's in that kind of environment to just say, right, I've done it, I've drawn it for you, there's the plan, I want you to do the foundations, I want you to build the walls, I want you to put the windows in, I want you to come and first fix it, second fix it, blah, 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 and just walk away and leave them. Anybody who's watched Grand Designs, for example, will see that's a recipe for disaster. So why do people say that's what they think they do in a project world? You don't. You sit down and you say, okay, well, where are we up to today? What are the challenges we've got? Oh, it's been raining for 3 weeks. We can't dig the foundations. Right, we need to think again. What do we do? We're becoming more agile in our approach. So this kind of hybrid working, I think, is logical. It's kind of common sense. Where the tools, techniques, life cycles and methodologies come in is it gives people access to some of those roadmaps, if you like, some of the things that you should be thinking about, some techniques for helping you to achieve what can become quite complex if you let it. But at its purest, it's about doing those basic things. It's about doing those basic things right. But most importantly, it's about telling people that you've done those things. And I would say 99% of the time when things go wrong, and I don't mean technically things have gone wrong, so there's a problem with an SQL server or there's a problem with the upgrade. I mean from a project perspective. So the time when things within an organisation, the red flag comes up and people are, what on earth's going on here? It's an absolute disaster. How, what's happening? We don't know where we are. It's because nobody's told them. I always say to people, we're not psychic. Stakeholders are not psychic. The rest of the organisation is not psychic. You need to tell them where you're up to. So transparency, honesty, they're values that we hold dear within Stoneseed, and we hold them dear for a reason. And that's because if you follow those basic rules, people accept things go wrong. People accept that, problems happen. It's how you deal with them, and it's what you communicate to the wider organisation that is critical in that environment. So, yes, all your evolving ways of doing things will continue, but the basics are always going to be the basics. The fundamentals are always going to be there, are always going to need to be done right. You're always going to have to tell people what the risks are, what the issues are. You're always going to need a plan. You're always going to need to understand who you need to communicate with. But you shouldn't let all that slow you down, and you should take time, to not only reflect, but also to understand what the implication of something you're about to do is, but not be set in your ways for the duration of the project. Things change, and I was talking to somebody the other day. I was trying to sort of come up with some analogies, because I always use the building analogy, and it dawned on me, and I thought, well, actually, it's not dissimilar, is it, to you getting in your car to go somewhere. So everybody who has a satellite navigation these days, a lot of sat nav systems, and whether that's on your phone or in your car, have live traffic updates, don't they? So you walk out to your car and you decide where your ultimate destination is, and hopefully you've got the postcode, which was part of your kind of initial scoping and prerequisites, if you like, for you to get into your car. So I'm assuming you've got your coat and your coffee and your keys and all of that, and you go and you punch in your postcode. And it may give you a few options. It may say, do you want to avoid motorways? Do you want to avoid toll bridges? You may say yes, or you may say, well, I don't really mind. As long as I get there, that's fine by me. So you punch it in and off you go. Now there's some governance around all this as you're moving along. There's kind of speed limits on the road. There's traffic lights. You need your insurance. You need MOT, or, etc., etc. So all that stuff's going on, but it's just there. You don't really think about it because that's the way you get from A to B when you're in your car. But what does happen now is your sat nav flashes up every so often, a big red car, or it does in my car, and a big red car is, oh no, that means there's trouble ahead and a delay is going to occur. But it's then very clever and it gives you some options, and it says, well, you could go this way and that will take you an extra 10 miles, but it will save you 25 minutes. Gives you the information for you to make the decision as you are on the journey. Those people who just get in their car, punch in the postcode, and irrespective of the information that's given to them, just keep driving until they get to their destination. They'll get to their destination, of course they will. But how many times will they get to their destination having wasted more time, more cost on fuel, more miles, more rubber off the tyres, etc., than they needed to? So being kind of agile in your approach, taking on board information at relevant points along your journey and changing your approach to match the situation that you're faced with, that's what it's about. And if you can do that successfully, then you'll get to that successful project outcomes that we're always talking about.
Next time, we're all about the Stoneseed difference. You can get in touch with Stoneseed's David Cotgreave and find out more about Stoneseed at stoneseed.co.uk. In the meantime, thank you for watching and goodbye.